As we discuss The Lord of the Rings, we'll start with the author, John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. His family and closest friends just called him Ronald. Tolkien's father was a bank clerk, and for reasons of promotion, he moved his family to South Africa, where J.R.R. was born on January 3rd, 1892. His father died tragically February 15th in 1896 when Ronald was just a young boy. So in 1900, his mother, after his father died while they were in South Africa, she moved J.R.R. and his brother Hilary back to England, and they joined the Roman Catholic Church. They lived in pretty much poverty, and then in 1904, tragically, his mother Mabel died of diabetes, leaving he and his brother orphaned. After his mother died, Tolkien and his brother were cared for by the Catholic priest Father Francis Morgan, and they wound up living in a boarding home. He attended King Edward's School, where he excelled at linguistics, so much to the point that he actually was making up his own languages as a very young man. So while he's living in the boarding house, he meets his future wife, Edith Bratt, who he has a friendship with. But Father Francis told Tolkien, who was 16 at the time, to wait until he was 21. And he did that. He listened to Father Francis and he waited till he was older to deepen the relationship with Edith. So Ronald then goes to university in Oxford, where he studied languages and literature and read classics. He studied and discovered a portion of this famous poem, which I don't have the Old English here, but I do have the translation. Hail, Arundel, brightest of angels, over Middle Earth sent to men. So we see here, Middle Earth is something that at an early age Tolkien gets caught up in, and this is the origin of him creating his own kind of universe, which becomes Middle Earth. Uh, J.R.R. Tolkien fought in World War One. He married his wife Edith, and they had 4 children together. 2 of his children are still living. One of his sons, Christopher, actually takes some of his notes and things that were unpublished, and he's put several of those things together and published them, and they've been received well. After he fought in the war, he found work as an assistant lexicographer in the New English Dictionary, which I found pretty interesting. He then famously became a professor at Oxford, where he had some substantial academic works, but was mostly known for his fiction, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, which is our subject. He was a founding member of the Inklings, which was a group including C.S. Lewis, who became Tolkien's close friend, and they would meet and talk about their works. Tolkien was actually very instrumental in the conversion of C.S. Lewis to Christianity. Tolkien died September 2nd, 1973, but his legacy still lives on today. The story goes that Tolkien was grading papers in his time at Oxford, and one of the papers that had been handed in uh, on one of the answer booklets, the student had just left it blank, and for some reason, unknown to anyone other than Tolkien, I guess, he wrote, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit." And so, the Hobbit is the first tale of Middle Earth, and it's really the precursor to the Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit talks about Bilbo Baggins and a quest he takes with some dwarves to return them to their homeland. It was released in 1937, and Tolkien didn't intend for it to be released as a children's book, but that's where the popularity really lay. And so the publishers come back to Tolkien and they say, we need some follow-up material. This did so well. And so that's where the Lord of the Rings starts. Now, the Lord of the Rings continues the tale with some of the characters from The Hobbit, but it also expands the history of Middle Earth. The Lord of the Rings is a 3-part trilogy, starting with The Fellowship of the Ring, which was released in 1954, The Two Towers, released in 1955, and then The Return of the King, also released in 1955. As I summarize The Lord of the Rings, I want to start with the most important characters. Now, with a work as large as The Lord of the Rings, which spans 3 books, it's hard to hit every character that deserves to be talked about and it certainly would be difficult to go into depth about each character the way that I feel each character deserves to be going into depth about. But I will just briefly discuss the main characters. As the protagonist, the main characters, I have the Fellowship of the Ring, which includes the hobbits Frodo Baggins, Sam Gamgee, Merry Brandybuck, and Pippin Took. They're all hobbits from the Shire who take off on this journey, some more reluctantly than others. Frodo is the ring bearer. He receives the ring from Bilbo, and it's his job to get the ring to Mordor. And then we have Gandalf, who is the wise leader of the group for the most part, who is Gandalf the Grey in the beginning and then kind of upgrades to Gandalf the White later on. Then we have Aragorn, who is the heir of Isildur, who is the rightful king of Arnor and Gondor, which are at this point separate, but later on we see Aragorn in the Return of the King unites the two kingdoms as he is the rightful king. Then we have Gimli the dwarf and Legolas the elf, and then Boromir, who is another man like Aragorn, who is the only member of the Fellowship to pass away or die in the quest. As far as the antagonist goes, Sauron is the Dark Lord who is in search of this one ring to rule them all, this ring of power that he can use to enslave all of Middle-earth. He has some help from the Nazgul, who are kind of the undead, you could say, who are chasing the Fellowship along the way. Then we have Saruman the White, who was a wizard, much like Gandalf, but a little bit more powerful, who joins up with Sauron. And then we have Gollum or Smeagol, who was a ring bearer at one point himself, who finds himself caught between resisting the ring and giving into the ring. He's kind of got split personalities. So, as I said before, there's so many characters that I haven't mentioned that deserve to be mentioned, but for the purpose of the length of this presentation, these are the main characters that I think are important to talk about. I boiled the plot summary down to as basic as I thought I could get without losing the emphasis of the story. Obviously, the story is very long, so it'd be hard to summarize each and every act of the story. But the plot goes like this: Evil's attempt to rule Middle Earth. You have Sauron, who is convinced if he gets the Ring of Power, he can enslave all of Middle Earth, and so he uses the Nazgul and the orcs and all of these different entities to try and get the ring from Frodo and the Fellowship. Now, Frodo inherits the ring from Bilbo, who took the ring from Gollum in The Hobbit. And in the books, you can see Bilbo's almost embarrassed by the fact that and broken by the fact that he stole the ring from Gollum, because in The Hobbit he could tell uh, just what it meant to Gollum. But the ring also has these effects on people that it's not only Sauron trying to get to the ring's trying its hardest to get back to Sauron. So you have this turmoil that goes on in whoever has the ring, and hobbits are somehow equipped, I guess, better to, I don't know how it's to say it, are better equipped to handle the ring than these other species of men who let the ring go to their heads, or elves or wizards who might use the ring with good intentions and yet still find themselves being evil with the ring. And so we have evil's attempt to rule Middle Earth, but we also have the Fellowship's attempt to destroy the ring. And so, what is the remedy to stopping Sauron? Well, the ring has to be taken back to where it was originally formed in Mordor and thrown into a volcanic lake, and so that would destroy the ring forever. It'll destroy the spirit of Sauron, and Middle Earth will be saved. So the whole three trilogy is these battles that go on to get the ring to Mordor, the battles between the forces of Sauron and the forces of men and elves. And so it's just a wonderfully put together epic story. And again, I wish I could tell every detail, but if you haven't read the books, you want to certainly read the books because they are fantastic. Now, I will say this, I'm going to talk about the movies, but things don't progress as quickly in the books as they do the movie. I would say one way to illustrate that is the beginning of the movie and the beginning of the books. We start at Bilbo's birthday, his 111th birthday party, And in the movie, it seems like that lasts maybe like 30 minutes to an hour. But in the book, we spend a long time at Bilbo's birthday and things that happen right after. The quest doesn't start quite as quickly as the movie makes it out to be. So, just like any movie adaptation of a book, the book has so much more in it that you really want to seek out. I wanted to talk about the spirituality in the Lord of the Rings. It's important to remember Tolkien's background in studying mythology and Old English, and so we don't have to over spiritualize the story necessarily. I wrote the Lord of the Rings can be seen more as a shadow of Christianity, not a picture of it. What I mean by that is um, that the elements and the things that come out as Christian are from Tolkien's worldview. Obviously, if you're a professing and committed believer in Jesus, whatever you do, that Christianity's come out. But that doesn't mean that the Lord of the Rings has to be an allegory and that every character has to stand for something or something else as far as Christianity goes. So I see a shadow of Christianity in the Lord of the Rings, not necessarily a picture of it. Also, there are underlying elements, obviously, of things that we see in the Bible and things that obviously our Christian world teaches us, such as evil and good. The difference between Sauron and Frodo, or Sauron and Gandalf, and even the idea of creation. At one point, Elrond, the Elf King, says that in the beginning, even Sauron was good. There was no evil. So evil and good are some underlying spiritual elements. Desire and attainment. We see in the ring a desire that seems almost unquenchable unless you have the ring. Then attainment leads just to hurt and brokenness. So we see kind of temptation and sin in that. And then friendship and love, which are not in contradiction at all to each other, but we see the story of good friends who would do anything, go even to the death for their brothers or for their brothers and sisters um, in a kind friendship. If some of you are as shallow as me, and I say that lightly, the movie is what actually drove me to read the books. The Lord of the Rings, the movies, are some of the best movies ever made, in my opinion. They're the sixth highest grossing franchise of movies, and that stat was taken before The Hobbit, the three movies came out. So I don't know if they would add those in as a separate franchise or add those in with the Lord of the Rings franchise. That may make an impact on the highest grossing list. Some close-up scenes of the ring were shot with a ring that was 6 inches in diameter. That's a pretty big ring. The beast the Nazgul ride make a distinct noise in the movie, and the producers used a donkey to make that noise. Actually, by the time the third film was released, the score composer Howard Shore, who's a famous score composer for films, had to write 7 minutes of music a day to keep up. And then the last kind of interesting thing about the movies that I wanted to add was Christopher Lee, who played Saruman the White, was actually the only cast member who was actually ever met Tolkien.